So I went a bit crazy in the plugin sales at the end of 2023, various deals from various manufacturers of plugins. Thought I'd give myself some treats, and some of the things are things I hadn't heard of, and quite a lot of the things are things I've wanted for a while, and just pushed the button on them because they were super cheap. I'm really happy, and I wanted to kind of show off what I bought and let you hear some stuff. So I started making a track the other day, basically using only plugins that I bought in the last couple of weeks, basically. And I haven't really used any of them before, I'm just getting to know them. So I thought, what better way to do that than to make an actual track? It's not finished, it's just a sketch, and it's got some drums, it's got some synth bass, and it's got some various synthesizers and even a bit of guitar. I bought a new guitar, which arrived yesterday, and one of the plugins I bought was an amp modeling plugin, which I'll get onto. So there's even some guitar on here. So here's a quick blast. Bit of a groove. And then we've got some bass. Quite soundtracky, and just it's just two chords, it's two simple chords. But yeah, the plugins I've used, well, the first thing I wanted to show you actually is the Tape plugin by Softube, which is, I've got various different tape emulations, but this is really something else. I've used it across various things here. I've used it across the cymbal track, I've used it on the actual kick drum and snare drum, and then on the master output, I think. Yeah, the master output, because I loved it so much. And so I'll get to that, but basically what the tape is doing, if I open up the plugin, and you've got various parameters, the speed, the age, the stability and the amount of saturation. I'm going to show you the drums first. The cymbal loop was from Triaz. In fact, Triaz I didn't buy in the last few weeks, so I'm cheating, but it's a very fast way of getting some nice percussion tracks going and some drum layers, and so I find it very inspiring. But it's not totally new, apologies there. What the tape is doing on that, if I turn it off, you hear how kind of like digital and bright sounding it is, which is fine. But I wanted it a bit warmer and a bit more saturated. And this high frequency trim out is a really nice EQ, sounds cool. And then the next thing I'm using is a brand new plugin I bought, which is by Fine Classic Plugins, and it's just called Dead Drums, and it does what it says on the tin. I'm using it for kick and snare. It's got a couple of things you can tweak inside it, but essentially it's just really basic plugin. But I've got the tape saturation on this again. Wanted to thicken it up. I'm driving the input, and then I've got the amount of color really set really high, and that's with the tape. This is without. It sounds good without it, but because this new tape plugin is really fun, I'm adding it to everything and just going, yep, I like it. It's obviously making it louder, but it's adding some attack and it's adding some punch as well. And I've got this EQ now. This is a Ableton exclusive, like Max for Live plugin called Zen EQ, and it's trying to copy Split EQ. It's an EQ, I think it might be by Eventide, but it allows you to EQ the transient of a sound and the body of a sound separately. And I'm using that here to add a little bit more boost into the transients, so it gives a bit more attack and energy to the actual attack of the drums. And that's with it. That's without it. So it's pretty cool, and it's free, so happy with that. And then another plugin I got, which is by Clevgrand. Now, Clevgrand are awesome. They make really creative plugins, and they had a really good sale on. I haven't bought much of their stuff, but I really want all of it. But I'm going to slowly, I think, pick and choose plugins that they do. And this one's a really kind of nice percussion-based sampler, or percussion-based instrument, where they've used lots of kind of quite interesting samples of different things, like buckets, shovels. And you literally got a grid like this, and then you can go into the sound, and then using this you can then change what instrument it is, and then you've got pitch, gain, pan, decay, all the different controls, filters, and then overall controls. You've got a reverb, you've got overall EQ, and it's just powerful. And I like adding sounds that aren't particularly normal or maybe are less used to drums. So this is what it's doing. Don't know what they are really, but they're kind of cool. And if you put them in with the other drums. And also I've added this new reverb that I got, which is old school reverb, and it's by Voxengo. They've got a bunch of amazing plugins and some of them are free. This one's a really, really, really good reverb, and I'm using a Bright Studio preset. And what that's doing is it's just contrasting the dry, dead drum sound with the reverb, and it just creates space and a bit more interest in the drums, basically. A bit more immersion. So all the drums together. Totally dry kick and snare and hi-hats, and then wet percussion. Cool. And that's called Slammer by Clevground. I think it was like 25 quid. And then the old school reverb is completely free by Voxengo. Really recommend checking out their stuff. They've got some brilliant plugins, including an excellent stereo widener, which I use all the time. Cool. Next up, Softube, one of my favourite plugin companies at the moment, or ever. The quality of their plugins is just so good. It feels like they're marketing themselves directly to people who just really want to get good sounds quickly. And a lot of their stuff is modelling very expensive hardware or really rare hardware. But they've got a few instruments that they've made, which are just their own instruments, which are synthesizers. One is called Monoment bass, which I bought, and I got this in their sale. It was speaking to me because I love synthesizers, but I'm not actually a massive fan of loads of tweaking. I get it, I understand it's creative, and it is, you can get really lost in it, but I actually want to load something up and quickly find a good bass sound. And if I'm in a studio with someone and we decide we want to put some synth bass on something, don't really want the time to drag on where I'm just tweaking. So this was just like a solution to that problem, and it's got everything you need built into it, and it's using sampled waveforms. You've got two source waveforms, A and B, and you can blend them. You can add analog dirt. You've got an amazing filter. Let me just play what I'm doing on this bass track, but it's just so warm. You've got this spatialization button which puts the sub in mono, and then you can add widening to the high frequencies. It's got a multiband compressor, and I mean, I'm putting in some ambience on that. It's really wet ambience, and I'm choosing the rusty ambient. I found every sound I selected from their preset was really great. You know, you've got an LFO you can add on there. Got tone controls, effects controls, but for this track I just went for something really simple. Another sound I use Monoment for, and I've bounced this down and added a spring reverb to it, is this sound. Again, that was one of the Monoment presets, but I tweaked it a bit. I've cut the low end using an EQ, which I didn't buy, and this spring reverb, which is a nice leading on from what I'm talking about with brand new plugins, because I bought Spring Reverb by Softube, which I've wanted for ages. Love spring reverbs. This one's super cool. Like, if I turn the mix up, it's pretty mad, but adding spring reverb to synths but it's just golden. Like, listen, without it, it's nice, but with it. And so spring reverb, I think, got Softube in their sale for like 35 quid or something. But bass and treble, string tension, you can do this, and then you can change the amount of springs. The main synth in this track is also coming from a Softube plugin, which I love, and I'm going to have a lot of fun with this. I haven't really delved in it that much, but it's called Statement Lead, and here actually, ironically, I'm using it for chords. But this is it. Looks kind of similar to the Statement. I think it's like a sister plugin for the Monoment bass, and you can really use, for these two synths, you can do everything you need to make amazing synth music. You really can. Similar idea, two source waveforms, which are sampled waveforms, a dirt setting, detune, you can add drive, you've got spatial effects like reverb, you've got a tone control with punch. I mean, it's just so good. You can do this blend here between the two sounds. And then you've got this kind of modulation sequencer, which I'm using here, this in the middle. So I turn the amount up. And you can... It's got this great knob called aging, which adds sort of movement and instability to the sound. What a genius idea. I mean, one of the things that people love about vintage synths is their instability and the fact that different ones sound different and you're going to get behaviour that's not totally perfect. Adds all this character that people talk about. And that's got a knob for that, which is brilliant. So you haven't got to buy an old synth to get that. It's just literally, you know, finding a preset. This is why I made this track. It was the first sound I loaded up. I just put 2 chords in. I was like, ooh, okay. Right, next up, a new couple of patches for my Labs, which is the Spitfire Audio Free instrument. And they've got loads of different sound libraries you can install. If you haven't got Labs, go and get it. It's free and endlessly inspiring. So I've got a couple of strings, or like they sound like strings, but they're sort of manipulated and weirdly recorded strings. One is doing a low sound, just a kind of droney thing. Very textural, and then the other one is doing a high note. So together, very evocative, quite moody. You know, I can see that being a nice intro and being done on a kind of a moody documentary or something. Now, this other plugin, which I don't know if you've heard of Soothe. There's a very popular plugin called Soothe, which I haven't bought. Someone has built a Max for Live plugin that does basically the same thing, and it's completely free. And I thought, well, let's try out using it. And what it does is it listens to the incoming audio, highlights the resonancies, and then allows you to subtract the resonancies. So if you look at this first plugin here called Boba, these little here, this is the reduction it's doing on particular frequencies in those sounds, and it may be that those frequencies are a bit annoying or they interfere with other things, so you can use this to bring them down. It's all automated. You just dial in what you want and it does it for you. So it's the same thing as a Soothe plugin, but completely for free. And if I turn it off, this sound is not something I've bought. It's there for that texture, that rhythmic, that polyrhythmic thing. Now, Native Instruments, Contact have given away a free instrument recently called Glaze, which I've just started dabbling with. I've got 2 instances of that in this track. One is doing this bloop. I called it boop. I literally have no idea what that is, but it's called Bouncing Ball. Glaze is amazing. I've got another instance of Glaze below, which is got loads of processing on it. Again, all with free new plugins. I'm going to turn off the effects I've added. This is it on its own. Now, Rhodes, the famous Fender Rhodes company, have given away a plugin recently called V-Pan. It's a panner. You choose the type of panning, like LFO, the type of panning motion. It's something called slew, smooth, and then you've got knob for rate and depth. And I love panning sounds. It just helps that weird sort of bleepy bloopy sound to move around you. But then Arturia came along, gave away this plugin, which is, I've just installed it and just got to know it. It's really cool. It's EFX Refract, based on the concept of an incoming sound being refracted and split into different things, voices, and then after you've split them, they're able to be affected. I haven't really delved yet, but this is what it's doing in this instance. It's probably going to be able to do loads more stuff. But it's adding harmonies. If I turn it off, it's just one note. With it, you've got this kind of chorus harmony thing, which is super cool. And then I've added Valhalla Supermassive, which is also free and also something that's new to me. It's not new in the world, but it's new to me. It's a delay with warping and modulation and stereo widening. Very creative. So in my productions, I love to have ethereal, atmospheric sounds in the background or adding something, and it's all about just creating space and contrast and things for the ears to have treats. It's quite quiet. I might probably turn it up a little. And it's a new colour. It's got this metallic, modern edge, and the other sounds are very analog and vintage, so those two things combined are quite cool. Right, and then the next thing we've got is this lead sound, which is another thing from Statement Lead. Going through V-Pan. So that's the the top line ascending melody. A bit reminds me a little bit of Mode Selector and that sort of German Berlin type sound, where it's quite a crude, catchy noise. I like those. I like that and this together. Alright, cool. And now the next thing, the final thing, is the guitar. All one take, just first take, mucking around really, but I came up with a nice melody. And the guitar I'm using is my new Fender Mustang, Japanese 97 Fender Mustang, which has got Seymour Duncan Antiquity pickups. Super nice guitar, love it. That's using my new toy, which is Amp Room by Softube. Here we go. So I chose vintage suites because it's got this. I'm more of a vintage guitar kind of guy. So it's got a Fender amps, which is based on an old vintage, and you've got EQ, tremolo on there, pedals. I'm using a Rat, a compressor, and then the other end I'm using a big reverb, another compressor, and then this Class A drive, which is basically just doing a little bit of a Neve thing. Any of your previous, if any of the other like Softube plugins that you bought will load within the relevant sections of them, load within here. So for example, reverb here, I've got the spring reverb because I bought their spring reverb, and it's got saturation because I've got that plugin. So these are all like, they're loaded up within Amp Room. So the tape echoes delay here on the bottom, I've already bought that plugin as a separate plugin, but you can load it up within Amp Room in this environment. Amazing reverb, and then I'm putting it through a fantastic UAD LA2A compressor, which was given away by UAD in October for free. Loads of compression, helping that guitar to, because it's a super spiky guitar, loads of transients, but it's helping that guitar to be more even and sort of sustained through the mix. That's the sort of solo section. It's the melody. And I'll quickly look at the master bus. Oh yeah, more new plugins on the master bus. This is a free compressor saturator limiter by Acustica Audio, one of my other favourite plugin companies. It's got preamp gain, it's got loads of control. I haven't really delved too deep. It's a freebie they gave away. I just chucked it on my master bus to see what it was like as a bus compressor. And I like it. I probably need to experiment more with it. Now, Pulsar Audio gave away a really amazing Neve modelling equalizer. So this is a mastering EQ that's great for your master bus, and it's designed to have the same curves as an old Neve mastering unit. And then on the master bus, I've got tape again. And I found a preset called Mixed Bus Warmer, so obviously going to use that one. With tape, I mean, obviously you can be more dramatic and push things and get effects, but often with really good tape emulation, you're not going to get a really immediately obvious effect. Sometimes you just notice subtle things in the low end, subtle mid-range saturation sometimes, and it's really just about, I guess, trusting that this is what tape's for, you know. But the way Softube's plugin works is super close to how the real tape would behave, more than I've ever heard on any other plugins that do tape stuff. Alright, I think I've done everything there. I don't know what this track's going to end up being like. It's got some potential, and I'm looking forward to keeping on playing with these plugins. Cool, alright, I hope that was useful. If you want to follow me and all that stuff, you know what to do.